Guys, so welcome back. I have let this dry actually a couple days now, only because I was busy yesterday, didn't have a chance to mess with it at all. So everything's nice and dry. The first thing I'm going to do real quick is hit it with some of my naphtha, basically just to clean off any vapors and oils and stuff. I have handled it just a little bit over the last couple of days, having to move some stuff around, so I just want to give it a quick little wipe down with the naphtha, make sure any of my finger oils and stuff are gone. And by the way, if my voice sounds weird or muffled, I am wearing my COVID mask at the moment, basically because the products I'm going to be using for the next step are the vapors are pretty strong, and it's recommended for both products to be wearing some sort of mask, and luckily, because of good old COVID, I already have one. So, quick little wipe down there. And as you can see, some of the, dye did still come off, but that is mainly because this stuff is actually a thinner. So it is still dry, just some of it is coming up because of the thinning properties of the naphtha here. But that's nice and clean. You may notice right around here, there is kind of a light spot that wasn't there before, and that was actually due to me taking a little bit of sandpaper and just kind of giving it a quick little sanding in one spot. I just wanted to kind of verify how dry it was, and so that's what that's from. What I've also done, and I'll show you this, is so first of all, once I get this sanded back, I'm going to be using this Transtint dye in Honey Amber. It's a concentrated solution, and that's what I'm going to be using for the dyeing process. And in here, what you can see is some of the dye that I've made up just by kind of playing around with the ratio of drops of dye to this denatured alcohol. Basically, it's what's recommended to dilute it with in order to apply it, because it is super concentrated. You don't want to put it on there straight without some sort of diluting, and they recommend doing denatured alcohol for wood applications. So so I just kind of played around with that, and I got a color that I think I'm pretty satisfied with. I did a little bit of testing on a couple of pieces of scrap wood. This is actually just paint mixer sticks, and you can see that second part right there. That's about the color I'm going to be going for, and I was able to get that using the ratio that you can see here, hopefully. So, but anyway, so the main thing I'm going to be doing in this video, and it's probably going to be a bit of a long one, is I'm going to be going over and doing all of my sanding to go ahead and sand back as much of this as possible, as much of that brown as possible, and get ourselves ready to apply the amber color. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw on a glove, because as I sand this stuff, it will give me dust and debris and stuff that'll stain your fingers, and I don't want that. So what I'm going to be doing, same as when I did the first initial sanding of this before I did the dye, I'm going to be using a 400 grit sandpaper. It's pretty fine, but not overly fine, but also not super rough. I've seen in the past, when I've been watching other people do this or researched it, a lot of people will actually use a powered orbital hand sander to do this process of sanding back, just to speed it up and kind of do everything a little faster instead of doing it by hand. I am not comfortable doing that just yet, only because I've never done this before, and I don't want to use a power tool and potentially do something a little over the top that I shouldn't. So I'm just going to do it by hand. I'm not sure, it may take a little bit of elbow grease, but luckily, since I only did one coat of the dye, and it's not super thick, hopefully it won't take too much sanding. And based on my little sample spot here, I think we're going to be okay without me having to do too much. This did not take a whole lot of sanding to achieve this. I've got this paper towel over here I'm going to use just to kind of keep my sandpaper clean as I go. Actually, I'm going to put that on this side. Alright, so I'm just going to get started on this process here. And I'm just continuing in the same spot that I started with yesterday. And again, just like when I was doing the initial sanding of the body before the dye, I am using just very, very light downward pressure, basically not even pushing down, just letting the weight of my hand be the pressure I use. I am going to probably pretty consistently, after every little section, go over that section with some of the naphtha, just to make sure I am cleaning out any debris that is getting in there. So I really want to be able to tell how far back I'm going and when I'm actually getting back to the original wood grain color. So I'm just going to kind of keep working around here. And I'm sure this is probably not the most exciting thing to watch. I did just want to include pretty much the entire process when I'm doing this. Just kind of how I wanted to do it, just to kind of show a really thorough step-by-step process. Sanding is not exciting. In fact, I don't really care for it, but being able to show this process just gives you a full concept of kind of what this involves and the work I'm putting into it. I will provide a timestamp in the description of the spot you can jump to if you want to skip through this part. Because again, like I said, I know it's boring. So there will be a timestamp in the description of the video if you'd like to jump ahead. But in the meantime, I'm just going to sit here and sand away until I start to get to the point where I'm back to the original wood veneer in as much spots as possible, or as many spots as possible. So, yeah, feel free to watch the entire thing, or speed up the playback if you want to just see it, but maybe in a little bit faster. I'm going to keep it in real time. I'm not going to speed it up myself. But feel free to either increase the playback speed on YouTube or just skip ahead to that timestamp. Need to adjust my little rig here. I can see that it looks like it's way more wobbly than it was yesterday, and I certainly don't want it to be too wobbly. Let's see if maybe that's a little better. Might be a little bit better. And again, as I mentioned in one of the previous videos, you can really see how using that naphtha, because it's providing some moisture, does give us a good little vision of how highlighted that wood grain is. And you can really see the difference in how much the grain is now standing out, having that brown in there to go with it. So I think we're definitely looking good as far as getting that effect that I was going for, you know, really wanting to let that brown highlight that grain. From the looks of it, I think we're really gonna have a nice result once we add our amber dye. I think it's just gonna do exactly what I hoped it would. I could probably go with a little bit coarser grit paper and speed this up a little bit, but because of the fact that I have even just hand sanding, I have sanded through one of these veneers before, so because of that, I definitely think I'm gonna, you know, I prefer to keep the 400 grit. That way I can kind of go very slowly and really gauge how how far I'm sanding, and make sure that I'm really just kind of going a little bit at a time. I am noticing, and I do apologize, that I'm seeing some wiggle from the camera as I'm doing this. And as I mentioned previously, I don't have like a special tripod or stand or anything. This is literally, it's actually sitting on one of my guitar stands, and it's on my table. So the wiggling is a little bit unavoidable, unfortunately. Maybe I'll look into getting something that I can stand separately from my from the table. I may go grab one of my microphone stands from the studio, or maybe see if I know somebody who has a tripod they wouldn't mind getting rid of, or I don't know. I might look into figuring something out. because there will be several videos in this series, and I guess I do want to make them look good. So. In case you're wondering, yes, I should probably be wearing a glove on this hand, but I'm more worried about the one that's actually holding on to the sandpaper and making the most contact with the wood here. As you can see, we're getting closer and closer to having a lot more of the original grain of the veneer showing through, that much lighter color there. And then just a quick little peek at one spot here. Once we add that moisture, just look how beautifully nice that grain pops. And once we add our mixture with that amber is going to hit these lighter spots, and then those darker spots are going to stay nice and dark. And I think we're going to get a pretty killer outcome on that. So I'm just kind of working a little bit at a time, cleaning as I go. Pretty much just going to be repeating this process until I get, I want to get just a little bit more off, because I really want to see as much of these lighter spots showing through as possible. That way I know I'll get as much visibility on that amber dye as possible. So I will definitely be taking it to a point where we've got a good amount of the top layer off. And there we go, first disaster. Kind of actually saw that coming. Let's see. I'm gonna take a second, stop the video, and see if I can see. This is my setup right here. It's actually just a PVC pipe guitar stand that my bass player made me, and it's sitting on my table. I'm gonna take a minute and see if I can't figure out something better, because there's a lot of movement that's I think is going to make this problem reoccur. So I'm going to stop this one for a second, and I'll bring y'all right back as soon as I get something else figured out. All right, guys. So I am back after that pretty sweet little fiasco there. Made some modifications to my recording setup so that it's not actually on the table. So now all my shaking and stuff shouldn't affect it, because we're not even touching the table now. So I should be able to shake this table and do all my sanding and not have any problems. So hopefully that's the case. So, back to where we were. I'll throw my glove back on here. Alright, yeah, I'm just gonna get back at it here. Excuse me. I'm actually, just because as I've been doing this, I've realized that I am able to put a little bit more pressure to speed the sanding up a little bit. And honestly, now that the situation with the wobbliness of the camera is taken care of, that'll allow me to do that. So I am putting just a little bit more downward pressure now, not an excessively large amount at all still, but just a little bit more than as I was previously doing. Just the weight of my hand, I am actually pushing down just a tad bit, but again, not a ton. So. As you can see, it's starting to get more and more contrasting every time I clean it, because we've got more and more of those light spots showing through as opposed to the darker spots in the grain. So it is slowly but surely starting to give us that appearance that I'm going for here. I think I'm about ready for a fresh piece of sandpaper. This one's starting to slow down pretty significantly on me as far as how much it's actually removing. One more pass, and I'm gonna grab me a new sheet. In case anybody was curious, and once again to reiterate, I'm not sponsored by anything, but this is the brand of sandpaper that I use. It's Gator. It's just what I found that I liked, and they've got all the way from super low grit coarse stuff to I think the highest I've seen from them is about 800 grit maybe. I only have that sandpaper from them up to 600 grit, I believe. And then for the really high, like 8, 12, 1600, and 2000 grit, I'm using 3M as my brand. And you'll see those later on down the line once I get further on in my processes here. Hit this with a good clean wipe down. I think it won't take too much more sanding before I am at the point that I'm going for as far as the contrast in this green and being able to go ahead and apply my amber color. Because as you see, when I get that moisture on there from this naphtha, you can just really see how much contrast is there. So it's pretty much almost exactly where I need it. I'm just going to go over it a little bit more, make sure I'm pretty even on all my different spots. And then I think we'll be ready to give the next step a try, which is going to be putting on our amber color. And I'm honestly super excited about that. Yeah, so just letting the naphtha take a second to dry. I don't want my sandpaper to grab any excess moisture, because then it'll start to hold too much onto these grains, or these, these dust particles, and it'll slow me down because it'll be building up on the sandpaper and not letting it do its job as good as it should. So I'm just going to kind of make sure it's nice and dry, which is again why I use the naphtha, because of the super quick drying time. So getting kind of dusty. Probably should have worn goggles, but I don't remember where my goggles are. And I apologize if I just showed it on the butt rack. Just want to get excess, as you can see, just all that brown pigment that I've knocked off of that body. go clean this little surface paper off. Just went and gave it a little shake off outside, and then use my naphtha, of course, once again. And really, I'm just doing this because I don't want a whole bunch of these pigment powders to be sitting on here and getting too much into the underside of the guitar. So it'll just kind of make that bottom side dirty. I don't want that. So I'm going to get a clean paper towel. I'm going to give it one more wipe down with my naphtha. And I think, though, we're probably just about where we need to be. So let's take a look. Oh, that looks so cool. So after this quick little cleanup here, I think I'm going to go just a little bit more, especially kind of up in this horn area here. There's just a little bit of, looks like excess that's not quite out of the grain, or out of the ungrained part that I'm trying to get like some of the surface stuff up. But man, I tell you, if you just look at that little spot as an indication of what we might be getting here, it is going to be super, super cool. Again, just giving it a second to dry off. Go here. Whew. Man, this is one of those things that takes lots of elbow grease, I'll tell you that. So I'm just seeing a few spots. So like this area right here, hopefully the contrast is pretty visible. But this area right here is about perfect as far as what I'm looking for, as a contrast of highlighted green areas to the empty areas. So it looks like I've got a little bit more to go here and here and on this edge, so I'm just going to kind of take those down a little more. I'm going to use a fresh side of the sandpaper for it. Whew. We're definitely getting closer. I'm only kind of gauging it as best as I can, because again, this is actually my very first time utilizing this specific technique on this kind of wood. I've actually never worked with quilted maple before. Ooh, that's dusty. I'm going to go ahead and take a microfiber cloth here, put a pretty generous amount of naphtha. There's a lot of dust is starting to come up now, but just look how pretty that is. So right around here is what I'm looking for. So if you can kind of see, these spots still have a little bit more work to go to really be showing more of this lighter color, because about this contrast to light to dark is what I'm going for. So I'll sand a little bit more on this side and up here, so that I can get myself closer to that here. But you can just really see how much that brown really makes that grain just look super nice. So yeah, looking at it, I think definitely we just got a little bit more to go in these general areas, a little bit up through here, a little bit more here, and kind of down through here, because this right here is exactly what we're going for. So I'm going to let that go, let that sit for a second. Go ahead and get a fresh piece of sandpaper. So, yep, still just a little more here. Same areas, just need to go a little bit deeper with them. Whew. You ever think sanding can make you sweat? Because it can. So now you can see my bottom area closely resembles that a lot more. Yeah, so those are pretty good. I think a little bit more here and a little bit more right here based on what I'm seeing right now. Yep. Alright, so give that a second to flash away. And I'm actually going to do a brief stoppage. Be back in just a minute. Alright, so I'm back from a quick little break there, and I gave it time to actually just kind of dry out after the last little naphtha wipe down. So I can still see a few of my darker spots, which you can kind of see right around there, coming up around here if you're just looking where my finger is on the screen. That little bottom scoop there, and then as well as this little section right around there. So I'm going to go ahead and hit those a little bit more. Get my handy dandy mask back on here. Get the new glove. Get a fresh piece of sandpaper. It's a good thing I waited until after all the panic buying to do this one, because these bad boys might have been hard to come by. Alright, so I'm just going to hit my spots that I can tell are still a little darker than I'd like them to be. won't lie, the next time I do this, assuming I use a similar technique, I will most likely opt for I'm using my power sander. I do have a orbital hand sander, but again, as I mentioned, I didn't want to use it for this first go round of trying this because I just am afraid to sand through this veneer, especially because it just looks so good. I would hate to sand through it. But this sanding does suck quite a lot. I'm definitely not a fan. And so I have a good feeling next go round I will be opting to try to learn how to do it with a power sander and do so without ruining it. But you know what? It's okay. It's a labor of love. So using that naphtha, if you can see there, does a couple of things. Kind of gives me first of all, aside from cleaning everything and making sure I'm working with only the material needed, it kind of shows me which spots have darker areas that need to be brushed away versus these lighter areas that are that are nice and showing me everything I need to see. So not much more to go. Looking pretty good. So it's looking like my upper right area needs a little bit more, and again this little bottom scoop area, that side looks good. So this bottom little area and a little bit up in this horn area apologize. I had to go grab my trusty little wireless earbuds and get some music going, because otherwise I'm just sitting here in silence. And that drives me crazy. Alright, there we go. Got some tunes going. Alright, so yeah, from what I could see, my last little look at it, looks like this little bottom scoop here, as well as a little bit up here, a little bit up here, probably a little bit in the middle. Sorry about that. Answering text messages. Whew, this is exhausting. So I still think I need to lighten up here and here, a little bit right in the middle, and I think a little bit more on this side, just because if you can see it, there are just more open areas that are lighter than here, and I want to make that as light as I can. I'm going to grab me some fresh sandpaper and throw these away real quick. Hopefully I still have some longer paper left. I'm actually just using what I have left over from previous projects. I haven't bought any more because I didn't think I would need it yet. But, oops. I up here. Oh, look at that. I found one more little sheet of my 400 grit. So I'm going to make the most of this bad boy. All right, I think I'm happy with where we're at here. Got a nice amount of my light areas with plenty of the contrasting there. Touch me a little spot that I noticed right around here. I think I'm happy with this. I am going to stop the video, clean up my area real good before I do the next step, which is going to be the dyeing with the amber color. So I'm going to stop the video real quick, clean everything up. As part of that, you already seen it, I'm just going to be giving this one more good wipe down with the naphtha. And then I'll come back and show y'all what it looks like, clean and sanded, before I actually come back and start the dyeing process. Alright guys, so I've got my area cleaned up. I grabbed the shop vac, vacuumed up all the excess dust and everything, wiped down my little mat here. So here is hopefully a good closer view. I apologize, the lighting is not the best, but here is our view of what the guitar looks like as of now with the current sanding level, all that dye sanded back, all those light areas there. Now we get to go to the fun part, which is going to be applying our amber stain. I have just a little bit mixed up here from when I did my little sample earlier, and I'm probably just going to use what I can of this first. First of all, just to see how much it takes to actually, like, you know, how the coverage is. I don't know how, you know, with this amount, I mean, I doubt I can cover the whole guitar, obviously, but, you know, it'll give me a gauge of how much more I'll need to make in order to, you know, cover the whole guitar. And I didn't actually do my final naphtha wipe down, so I'm going to do that real quick here. That just looks so cool. So it should be nice and clean. And just doing this to get rid of any debris, dust, grease, anything that might cause any issues with my finish here. So good wipe down there. And you know what, while I'm waiting for that to kind of flash away and dry, I'm actually just gonna mix up a little bit more of my color here. Since I have kind of an idea of the ratios I'd use to get this color, I'm gonna go ahead and make a little bit more. Oh, and good reminder to be wearing my mask, because that stuff smells like crap. And it looks like I've got my color consistent still, but I've got a little bit more made up. Let's see how far that gets me. so I'm just going to wait just another quick little second here. You can see that naphtha's still drying out a little bit because I did use quite a bit. And I probably should stop touching it because every time I touch it, I got to go back over with naphtha to get rid of my finger oils. So. Take me a quick little beer break. Cheers to you guys. Whew. And just a note, just as I did with the brown dye, I'm going to be using just some strips of that headband, basically this t-shirt material, as my applicator for the dye, or the stain, whatever you want to call it. Dye, it is dye. So, again, just old headband that was made of t-shirt material, cut into strips. It was just not super absorbent, but holds on and it distributes really well. A towel or a paper towel or a microfiber, those are a little too absorbent and they'll take too much of the stain away. So the t-shirt material is pretty much just ideal. So just waiting just a little bit longer. Looks like it's almost completely dried out. And I gotta tell you, I am insanely excited for what this is about to look like. I've been pretty excited about this one for a while, especially once I got the inspiration and the idea. But then the biggest thing for me was when it actually came in and I saw just how nice the grain and figuring on this piece of wood was, or this veneer. I've been super excited ever since then to be doing this, so I think it's going to look pretty awesome. I'm just going to chill with y'all for a second, let this continue to dry out. Basically just looking for those little darker spots to fade kind of back to this lighter color, because this is where it's still just a little, this is the first place I went to wipe, so it got the most of the naphtha, so it's taking a little bit longer to dry because it was a little more saturated with that naphtha. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the moment of truth. I am super excited to see what we get here. And once again, for any of you who may have skipped to the timestamp here in order to just basically watch the good part, which I wouldn't blame you, what I'm working with is Trans-Tint dye in the honey amber color. It is a concentrated dye solution, so it is mixed with denatured alcohol. And I've already made my ratio up with the color that I wanted, the level of color, the intensity, which I figured out by using just a swizzle stick from not a swizzle stick, I'm sorry, like a paint mixer, paint mixing stick. So here we go. Let's see what happens. I'm gonna go ahead and just get my rag nice and saturated. squeeze out my excess. And here we go. Here goes nothing. Oh my goodness, that is pretty. Now, as I'm going through, I'm just going to pretty much be doing this the same way. Dip the rag entirely in there to get it saturated, and then squeeze out the excess. Oh man, it looks so good. I'm not sure. I'm going to kind of gauge this once it dries. I don't know if I'm going to need to use either a stronger concentration or perhaps just an additional coating in order to achieve the intensity of color that I want. I won't really know until I just put a coat on, let it dry, and then basically see what it does, and basically see if I've got to add more to intensify it. But as of just looking at it right here, I gotta tell you, I am pretty friggin' happy with what I'm looking at. If I had to guess, I think I will probably slightly intensify the mixture. So just a little bit higher ratio of dye to alcohol. Basically because I just really want that honey amber color to show through and be nice and prevalent. But tell you what, while I've got it here, I've still got plenty of denatured alcohol. So I'm just gonna go ahead and intensify my mixture. I'm literally just kind of doing this on the seat of my pants, guys, so hope it's entertaining for you, at least, if nothing else. But I definitely will say that I believe I've achieved the effect I was going for. Let's just look how that contrast shows through. That is super cool. And it'll dry and that'll kind of dull away, but the good thing about that dulling away a little bit is it will end up getting back to that initial super nice really high contrast look once I start doing the lacquering, because the lacquer will provide that moisture and coating to seal in that nice high contrast look. So I added a few more drops to my mixture just to make sure that I get the color that I'm wanting out of it. And yeah, I really like that. I really like that. I think pretty much exactly what I wanted to happen is what's happening right now. One thing I will mention that I don't think I had talked about, just because it hadn't really crossed my mind, but I am making sure to squeeze out as much excess liquid as possible when I'm saturating this thing, and the reason for that is that I don't want to, I shouldn't have touched that with my hands. I don't want to overly wet this veneer, because again, as I mentioned before, it's pretty thin, and if anybody who's worked with any kind of wood before, you get moisture up under it and it gets too wet, it will kind of start to bubble and warp. And because this is so thin, it won't take a whole lot of liquid to make that happen, and it could cause warping and bubbling up in this veneer, which could cause some issues with it being attached to the guitar body, and it could just make a mess of things, and I don't want to have to deal with that. So I am making sure to definitely squeeze out all the excess. But man, I gotta tell you, I really do love the look that it looks like we got. I do like this concentration of color that I came with here by adding a few more drops. So I am going to go ahead and hit this with just one more coating of the same concentration, and then that'll be it for this video. In the next video, my intention is to have let the guitar dry and see how it looks, decide if I want to add more color to intensify the coloring, or if I believe that it looks like I want it to. If it does come out and turns out to be exactly what I was going for, I don't need to add any more color onto it, then it'll actually be ready for me to take to the next step of the finishing process, which will be to hit it with what's called a sanding sealer. What a sanding sealer will do is it will seal the color and seal in all these dyes and finishes, but gives me a surface that I can begin to sand to a perfect smoothness, which is what I want to do before starting my clear coats, and that'll just help make sure I get the smoothest, most even clear coating, which just means that the overall finish will look as good as it possibly can. So, but yeah, I think I'm super happy with the coloring I got out of this. I'm gonna go ahead and pop my gloves off, grab the camera, and just show you guys a couple different views. So here is what it looks like. And man, I gotta tell you, I am insanely happy with this. It looks phenomenal in my eyes. Honestly, once it dries, if it hasn't faded much and looks pretty much like this, I think I'll probably go ahead and start taking it to the finishing stages, because this just looks gorgeous. Super happy with it. All right, guys, so that's all I'm going to do on it tonight. Again, like I said, I am going to let this dry overnight and basically come back on it tomorrow, see what it looks like, and decide whether I want to do any more coloring or if I'm ready to go ahead and start going to the next stage. So thanks for watching. I know this was a long one. I'm sure some of y'all skipped ahead. So either way, thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Thanks.